Have you ever looked around your home and wondered, how much of this truly adds to my happiness? We spend decades chasing success, accumulating possessions, filling our lives with things we once believed were essential to our joy. But now, at this stage of life, a new truth begins to emerge. The things we own, the countless objects we've gathered over the years, do they really define our happiness? Or is it something deeper? Think back to the moments that have truly mattered. Was it the excitement of buying a new gadget, or was it the quiet morning spent sipping coffee as the sun rose? Was it the expensive jewelry, or was it the warm laughter of a loved one? For many of us, the path laid out by society seemed clear. Work hard, earn more, acquire more. But what if happiness was never meant to be found in things? What if joy was waiting for us in the moments in between, where peace, simplicity, and true connection live? Now is the time to step back, slow down, and ask, what truly matters in the life I want to live? Before we begin, I'd really appreciate it if you like this video. It helps me keep sharing more important lessons. If you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend hitting the subscribe button and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Also, if you enjoy this video, please comment 1. If you don't, comment 0 so I know how to improve. Now, let's get started. I want to share a moment that changed the way I see life. Years ago, I made a decision that, at the time, felt overwhelming, but looking back, it was one of the most liberating choices I ever made. I decided to downsize. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My home was filled with things I had collected over the years, things I once thought I needed, things I had convinced myself held meaning simply because I owned them. But when I really looked around, I started to see them differently. There were clothes I hadn't worn in decades, kitchen appliances I had forgotten existed, and drawers filled with trinkets that had long lost their significance. I remember standing in my garage, staring at box after box of just-in-case items, and feeling an unexpected wave of exhaustion. How had I let so much pile up? And more importantly, why was I holding onto it all? I had convinced myself that these things were a part of me, that they represented my achievements, my experiences, my life. But when I started going through them, really going through them, I realized that most of them had nothing to do with who I was. They were just objects, gathering dust, taking up space, creating noise instead of meaning. Then came the hardest part, letting go. I remember picking up an old jacket, one I hadn't worn in years but had kept simply because it reminded me of a different time in my life. I hesitated. A small part of me wanted to keep it, just in case I needed it one day. But then I asked myself, will I really wear this again? Or am I just holding on to a memory, afraid to let it go? That question became my guide. Slowly, I began letting go of the things I no longer needed, and with each item I removed, I felt lighter. It wasn't just about decluttering my home, it was about decluttering my mind, my heart, my life. The weight I had been carrying wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Every item I released felt like shedding a burden I hadn't even realized I was carrying. And as I let go, something incredible happened. I made space. Not just in my home, but in my life. Space for peace, for clarity, for the things that truly mattered. And in that space, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time, freedom. And that, I realized, was worth more than anything I had ever owned. If you're still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment 2 below to let me know you're still here with me. Thank you for taking the time to watch. There was a time when I believed happiness was something to be chased, something found in grand achievements, expensive possessions, or once-in-a-lifetime experiences. I thought joy came from the next big thing, the next promotion, the next vacation, the next purchase that promised to make life easier or to finally make me feel complete. But over the years, I've come to realize that true happiness isn't found in the extraordinary. It's found in the quiet, ordinary moments we often overlook. The simple things, the ones we once dismissed in our search for something greater, are the very things that bring us the deepest sense of peace. Think about it. What is the moment that has brought you the most warmth in recent years? Was it an extravagant purchase? Or was it something far simpler, like waking up to the sound of birds outside your window, sitting in the late afternoon sun, or enjoying the first sip of coffee on a crisp morning? It's these little things that make life rich. And yet, for so long, many of us were taught to believe that real joy comes from having more. More money, more success, more stuff. We were conditioned to think that a new car or a bigger house would bring us lasting fulfillment. But have you ever noticed how quickly that initial excitement fades? How soon we start looking for the next upgrade, the next thrill, the next distraction? The cycle never ends, and the feeling of enough remains just out of reach. Happiness has never been about accumulation. It's about appreciation. The moments we hold closest, the ones we reflect on years later, are not measured in dollars but in presence. They are the ones where we are simply there, engaged in something real. The laughter of a grandchild, the comfort of a familiar book, the feeling of warm hands wrapped around a cup of tea. These are the treasures of life, not because they are rare, but because we have finally learned to see them. And the best part? They are free. The only cost is our attention. Now, I want you to pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Look around. What is something in your daily life that brings you joy but often goes unnoticed? Maybe it's the way the morning light filters through your window. Maybe it's the first bite of a home-cooked meal. Or maybe it's the peace that comes from sitting in your favorite chair, listening to music that takes you back to a simpler time. These are the moments that matter. And the more we slow down, the more we begin to recognize them, not as trivial details, but as the essence of a life well lived. The beauty of simple joys is that they have always been there. The problem is, we often don't see them. We've been too distracted, too convinced that happiness lies just beyond our reach, too caught up in a world that tells us to keep striving instead of simply being. But here's the truth: happiness is not something we need to search for. It's something we need to notice. And once we do, once we shift our focus from wanting more to appreciating what we already have, we realize that contentment was never missing. It was just waiting for us to slow down. I remember an older man I once spoke to, a man who had lived a long and full life. I asked him what his happiest memory was. He didn't mention a fancy vacation, a big house, or a luxury car. He smiled and told me about the time he sat on his front porch with his wife, listening to the rain. Just sitting there, together, saying nothing, sharing a quiet moment. That was what stayed with him, not something he bought, but a moment he felt. That was happiness. And that's the secret so many of us spend our lives missing. Happiness is not found in the things we buy, but in the moments we choose to savor. When we slow down, we open ourselves up to the simple pleasures we've been rushing past. The warmth of a hug from someone we love. The way the air smells after a fresh rain. The feeling of slipping into bed after a long day, knowing that, for this moment, everything is okay. These are not minor details. These are the things that make life truly meaningful. When we embrace these small joys, life feels fuller, not because we have more, but because we finally see that we have always had enough. So I challenge you, starting today, slow down. Pay attention. Let go of the idea that happiness is waiting for you somewhere in the future. It's not on the other side of the next achievement, the next purchase, the next milestone. It's right here, in the quiet beauty of the everyday. All you have to do is notice it. If you're still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment 3 below to let me know you're still here with me. Thank you for your valuable time. There's something about holding onto things that makes us feel safe. We collect, we store, we accumulate, not just objects, but memories, emotions, and even regrets. We tell ourselves that we'll use it one day, that it's valuable, that it represents something important. But over time, all of this clutter starts to take up space, not just in our homes, but in our minds, in our hearts. We don't notice it at first. A closet packed with clothes we haven't worn in years, a garage filled with boxes of things we forgot we even owned, shelves lined with keepsakes from trips we barely recall. Each object holds a small piece of us, and yet, as the years go by, we realize something profound. We don't own these things, they own us. I remember when I first confronted my own clutter. I stood in front of my closet, staring at clothes I hadn't worn in years, shoes that had gathered dust, and accessories I had completely forgotten about. And then, a question hit me like a wave. Why was I keeping all of this? Why was I holding onto items that no longer served me? It wasn't just about space. It was about attachment, about the weight of nostalgia, about the fear of letting go. And yet, as I slowly started removing the unnecessary, I felt something unexpected, relief. The more I let go, the lighter I felt. Each item I removed wasn't just clutter, it was a burden I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I realized that so much of what I had been holding onto was not adding value to my life. It was quietly draining me. The things I thought I needed were nothing more than distractions, filling my home but emptying my energy. I had spent years acquiring, but now, for the first time, I felt the power of releasing. And in that moment, I understood something that changed my perspective completely. Decluttering is not just about making space in our homes. It's about making space in our lives. As I continued clearing out the clutter, something incredible happened. I didn't just gain space in my home, I gained clarity in my mind. Every unnecessary item I let go of was like shedding an invisible layer of stress. And with every item I released, I asked myself a simple but powerful question. Does this add value to my life? If the answer was no, I released it. Some things I donated, some I gave to loved ones who would truly use them, and others I simply discarded. What amazed me most was not just the space I gained, but the freedom I felt. The hardest part was making the decision to begin, but after that, the process felt liberating. There's a reason decluttering feels so freeing. It's not just about physical space, it's about emotional clarity. Every unnecessary item in our home represents something. An old dream we never pursued, a version of ourselves we no longer are, a lingering sense of guilt over things we never used. That pile of clothes you never wear. It might represent the person you thought you'd be, but never became. The drawers filled with forgotten gadgets? They might symbolize money spent chasing happiness in the wrong places. We don't realize it, but every object carries a weight. And when we let go, we aren't just tidying up, we are giving ourselves permission to move forward, to live lighter, to focus on what truly matters. Now, imagine walking into a room where everything you own has a purpose. No excess, no clutter, just space, lightness, and simplicity. Imagine knowing exactly where everything is, being able to breathe deeply without the constant noise of too much. That is the gift of decluttering. It's not about living with nothing, it's about living with enough. And in that space of enough, we find something priceless: peace. If you're still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment 4 below to let me know you're still here with me. Thank you for your valuable time. For years, we were told that happiness comes from having more money, more possessions, more status. Society conditioned us to believe that success is measured by how much we own, by the size of our homes, by the brands we wear. We worked hard to afford the newest gadgets, the most luxurious vacations, the things we were told would complete us. But as we grow older, a simple truth becomes undeniable: more doesn't always mean better. In fact, in many cases, more only means more stress, more responsibility, more financial pressure. Think about it. How many things have you bought over the years that brought you only temporary happiness? How many times have you felt excitement over something new, only for that feeling to fade as quickly as it arrived? The thrill of a purchase fades, and soon enough, we find ourselves chasing the next thing, believing that this time, it will finally bring us fulfillment. But it never does. Instead, we end up stuck in a cycle, spending, accumulating, wanting more. All the things we truly need, peace, security, and time, slip through our fingers. But here's the secret most people don't realize: spending less doesn't mean living less. It means living more. When we stop spending money on things we don't need, we gain something far more valuable: freedom. We no longer have to work extra hours to afford unnecessary luxuries. We no longer feel the pressure to keep up with trends that don't bring real joy. Instead, we create space for the things that truly matter. We gain time to spend with loved ones, energy to invest in our well-being, and the ability to enjoy the simple pleasures of life without the burden of excess. Imagine what life could look like if we spent less on things and more on experiences. What if, instead of chasing the latest upgrade, we invested in moments that last? What if, instead of spending on another outfit we don't need, we used that money to visit family we haven't seen in years? What if, instead of keeping up with trends, we invested in our health, our passions, our dreams? The truth is, when we learn to need less, we begin to live more. Something remarkable happens when we stop chasing more. We start feeling free. Free from the pressure to keep up with an endless cycle of spending. Free from the weight of financial stress. Free to enjoy life without worrying about the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next big expense. When we let go of the idea that we need more to be happy, we suddenly realize how little we actually require to live a rich, fulfilling life. Think about the happiest moments in your life. Were they defined by the things you owned? Or were they defined by the experiences, the people, and the sense of peace you carried? The joy of a conversation with a dear friend, the laughter of a grandchild, the comfort of a simple home-cooked meal. These moments cost nothing, yet they hold more value than anything money could buy. And when we spend less, we make room for more of these moments. There's also a financial freedom that comes with spending less. Many of us spent years working hard to afford a lifestyle built around material success. But now, at this stage of life, we have the chance to redefine what success truly means. Does success mean owning the biggest house, or does it mean having the peace of mind to live without financial worry? Does success mean driving the newest car, or does it mean having the time to enjoy the journey, rather than always racing toward the next thing? When we choose to live simply, we also create a sense of security for ourselves. Instead of working to sustain unnecessary spending, we can use what we have wisely, to travel, to invest in our health, to build memories with the people we love. That is the real gift of spending less. Not deprivation, but true abundance, the kind that fills our hearts, not just our homes. For most of our lives, we have been in motion. Always moving, always planning, always chasing the next goal. From careers to raising families, from managing responsibilities to keeping up with the expectations of society, life has often felt like a race, one where the finish line keeps moving, always just out of reach. And then, one day, we look up and realize something: we're tired. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. The relentless pace of life has left little room for peace, for reflection, for truly being present in our own moments. Think about it. How often have we rushed through our days without really experiencing them? We wake up thinking about the tasks ahead. We move from one obligation to the next, and by the time we sit down in the evening, we're too exhausted to truly appreciate anything. We tell ourselves that tomorrow we will slow down, tomorrow we will rest, but tomorrow comes, and the cycle repeats. The world we live in encourages this constant movement. It tells us that being busy is a sign of success, that productivity is the key to happiness. But in reality, busyness doesn't always mean fulfillment. It often distracts us from the things that truly matter. What happens when we slow down? At first, it can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. We're so used to filling our schedules, keeping ourselves occupied, that the idea of simply pausing feels unnatural. But slowing down doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing things with presence and intention. It means taking the time to savor a meal instead of rushing through it, to truly listen to someone instead of thinking about what we'll say next, to walk without urgency, to rest without guilt. And when we slow down, something extraordinary happens. Life becomes clearer. We start to notice the beauty around us. We begin to hear our own thoughts again. We reconnect with what truly matters. And for the first time in a long time, we stop feeling like we're just passing through life. We start actually living it. When we slow down, the world doesn't stop, but our perspective shifts. We begin to see things we once overlooked. We start appreciating the way the morning light spills through the window, the feeling of a gentle breeze on our skin, the peaceful rhythm of life when we are no longer rushing through it. These are the things we were too busy to notice before, too preoccupied with responsibilities and distractions to appreciate. But now, with the gift of time and awareness, life takes on a new depth, one we never knew we were missing. One of the most profound changes that happens when we embrace a slower pace is that we gain clarity, not just about our surroundings, but about ourselves. We begin to separate what truly matters from what was just noise. We realize that many of the things we once worried about no longer deserve our energy. The pressure to impress others, the endless pursuit of material success, the stress of trying to meet every expectation, suddenly, these things feel insignificant. What takes their place? Peace, contentment, gratitude. Slowing down also allows us to reconnect with our own thoughts, to listen to the voice inside us that was drowned out by years of busyness. We stop looking outside for answers and start looking within. We gain a deeper understanding of what brings us joy and fulfillment. And in that stillness, we start to see a truth that was always there. A meaningful life isn't measured by how much we do, but by how deeply we experience the moments we have. So what does this mean in practice? It means choosing presence over urgency. It means lingering over a conversation instead of rushing to the next task. It means enjoying the process of cooking instead of just seeing it as another chore. It means sitting outside for no reason other than to feel the warmth of the sun. It means allowing ourselves to live, not just exist. When we embrace slowness, we give ourselves permission to live fully, not in a way that is dictated by the rush of the world, but in a way that is truly our own. When we look back on our lives, what do we remember most? Is it the things we bought, the possessions we accumulated, the endless race to acquire more? Or is it the moments, the deep conversations, the laughter shared with loved ones, the quiet evenings spent in peace? The truth becomes clearer as we grow older. Happiness was never in what we owned. It was in what we experienced, in the love we gave, in the presence we shared with those who truly mattered. Yet, for so many years, we were told otherwise. We were taught to equate success with busyness, to measure happiness by what we could acquire. We spent decades believing that more was the answer. But now, with time and wisdom, we see what was hidden in plain sight. Life's greatest treasures were never for sale. They were always around us, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be cherished. Imagine, just for a moment, living without the weight of unnecessary possessions, without the pressure of keeping up with a world that never slows down. What would it feel like to wake up and know, with certainty, that what you have is already enough? To not feel the need to buy more, chase more, or do more just to prove your worth. That's what slow living gives us. It strips away the distractions and leaves behind only what truly matters: peace, contentment, and freedom. And yet, choosing this path isn't always easy. The world will still try to convince us that we need more to be happy. Advertisements will continue to promise that fulfillment lies in the next big purchase. But when we pause, when we step back and truly see what life is about, we realize we already have what we were searching for all along. We just needed to slow down long enough to recognize it. When we choose to slow down, when we decide to step away from the noise of consumerism and constant busyness, we make room for something far more valuable, a life that is truly our own. A life where our time is spent on things that nourish us, where we are no longer chasing an illusion of happiness, but instead, embracing the quiet joy of simply being present. Think about the legacy you want to leave behind. Do you want to be remembered for the things you owned? Or for the love you shared, the wisdom you passed on, the kindness and presence you gave to those around you? No one will remember the brand of clothes we wore, the kind of car we drove, or how many gadgets we had. But they will remember how we made them feel, the conversations we had, the way we showed up when it mattered. That is what lasts. That is what truly defines a meaningful life. And so, the question becomes, how do we want to spend the years we have left? Will we continue to let the world dictate what we should want, what we should buy, how we should live? Or will we take back control, slow down, and live in a way that fills our hearts instead of just our homes? The choice is ours. Because in the end, life isn't about how much we own, it's about how deeply we live. It's about the relationships we nurture, the peace we cultivate, and the moments we allow ourselves to fully embrace. And the beauty of it all? We don't have to wait. We can choose, right now, to step into a life of simplicity, of clarity, of joy. A life where less isn't a loss, it's a gift.